I am a terrorist. The new era of profiling created as a solution to Los Angeles County's invasion of North America, Zone 5150, United We Stand, by Rachel Sakhi. Table of contents include learning boundaries versus the acquisition of legislating boundaries based on pedophile, homosexual, human, and animal conjugation trafficking. U.S. PATRIOT Act for national security measures versus utilizing congressional laws and legislative bills passed to strengthen, instead of national security, but backward desires of a miniature government desired by the people who suffer from severe lack of good judgment, probably due to a settled mental illness, ongoing perversion of thoughts and ideas through a positive rewards system, whereas utilizing perversion toward children on a daily basis is actually rewarded with retail products and a better quality of life, which doesn't seem to be a very high quality of life, but it gives reward back in return. Dependent raping. This is a form of rape that's done to acquisition a result in your own favor, where you continue and continue to rape someone who you're obviously not invited to interact with. Not the first year, not the second year, not the third year, not the fourth year, not the fifth year, not the sixth year, not the 10th year. Decades and decades go on. And because of a positive reward system toward perversion of a sexual manner, then the dependent crutch and the dependent wheelchair, sort of like an SSI check, where you're dependent on something to survive. So if you're not mentally ill due to the lack of discovery and neglect to focus on sick, ill people and brush those things under the carpet, then terrorist activities are in lieu of an SSI check. Kind of like while I'm recording right now. You'll notice when I say something that makes sense, that focuses on their mental illness, they send an LAPD siren. I'm going to read the number of the car. So it's LAFD paramedic 209. Okay, so this is the Skid Row area of, it's actually the jewelry district of Los Angeles. So it was quiet for approximately 2 hours while I began to type, because they need to figure out what state of mind I'm in and why I'm typing something, and they try their best to rape in a socialist manner. If you don't understand what socialist raping is, which is how most children get raped, then I would advise you to conduct some advice from the country of Germany. And so since you like power and authority, and that's how you base rankings of social equality in Los Angeles, then I will give you help. I want to help you secure a socially high status to the people of the German country and their government. So since that's what you yearn and desire for, and then you create examples by throwing people over bridges and murdering and killing people like Nicole Brown Simpson, who was a victim of Los Angeles Police Department, and not O.J. Simpson. So they usually take one person that they hate, who had privilege in society, that they feel they've been ousted on. It's painfully agonizing to sit back and watch someone that you think your hair texture is better than wander around in society with the freedom to marry a white woman who obviously was very popular. And then on top of that, my theory is that O.J. Simpson as well had such a great lifestyle that he had acquired, but through, when you love someone and you marry them, that comes with privileges. So along with Nicole Brown Simpson came a large family of white people. And so this scenario can get applied to most black women and black men, because we're already secure in our own race. It doesn't mean that we don't love our own race. People automatically think, for example, why isn't she married to a black guy? I actually cannot get married to a black guy, believe it or not, not in Los Angeles. Do you know why? Because I'll get beat down for marrying, not because I think, the first thing you would think is she thinks she's white, or she thinks she's Arab, or she thinks she's, actually, when you look at the truth and the sickness of why I would get beaten down for marrying a black man, then you would look at the circumstance by stepping out of the box, and you would say to yourself, Los Angeles is the most disgusting piece of possession owned by the American Charter ever to exist, who practices power as a government to relieve people of overwhelming obligations on a piece of land. If it's mentally overwhelming, the government has the power to actually come in and interact with workers and soldiers who can relieve people of overwhelming duties to manage overwhelmingly growing populations who seem to not be able to control reproducing offspring. And I think it's because Los Angeles is so overcrowded due to the lack of education in family planning is actually how people become enslaved. I mean, if you simply control how many kids you birthed, instead of depending on children to buy you shampoo and hair conditioner, I mean, shampoo, I could imagine how many times a day people, as often as they go to work, and I don't even work, as often as you have to get exposed to the elements around workplaces and environments, doing all of these big giant jobs of high profile that you have to do, I would imagine you use shampoo and hair conditioner quite often, right? So if you can't afford to buy shampoo and hair conditioner, which is only $5 for a huge, almost a gallon, in ratio to the amount of times that you're washing your hair, because you're the best, right? You deserve a husband because you're better. You're better than everybody. So for as much as you wash your hair because you're the cleanest, you're not gross. Ew! When people look at me, they, ew, she's gross. Ew, look at what she's doing. She's so gross and unclean. Well, Los Angeles is known statistically by the United States government to be the largest child trafficking problem of all places across the world, right here in America. So if we have an organized government and Congress, and we're bordering Mexico, which manufactures most products, and India works as a commonwealth and supports an entire continent on scraps of paychecks due to the exchange rate being extremely valuable compared to the Indian ruble or rupee, ruble, I'm not sure, I'm not Indian, so I wouldn't know. I focus on my government only, which is the US dollar. America is on my mind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't matter if I try to learn Arabic. It doesn't matter if I speak Farsi. It doesn't matter if I write my last name in Farsi. It doesn't matter if I acquired the last name Sakhi. It really doesn't matter. Obviously, I'm so consumed in North America that I seem to know a little bit more about the American government than any country in the world, don't I? Regardless of what gossip you try to spread to gain a means and ends to support your trafficking. So this is a little summary aside from the notes that I'm reading from a book I just published. It's a book. Did you know that a paragraph can be 3 letters long? I bet you didn't. Well, I'm giving you free advice, so you don't have to enroll in college. So a paragraph can range from 3 letters in length. It all depends on how well you speak English. And the reason I feel so strongly about that is because I've been beaten up many times and harassed for not knowing how to speak English. But I do know that. It's just something that I've learned. And I think it's very valuable, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. But I don't think that makes any sense because your trafficking overpowers my English skills. Therefore, my English, you're determined to say, represents garbage. Yes? That's the whole agenda you had behind trying to find me a significant other that doesn't speak English. And then closing him into your house so that you can prove by any means necessary that what was in my past you can recreate in your own little controlled environment, in your own little index card, which is a 3x5 space, apparently, which is your imagination. And it's only controlled by about 20,000, I'd say about 5,000 gang members, right? You may not consider yourselves gang members, but a gang member is someone who practices violence physically using weapons. You've already done that. Your hand was a weapon when you shoved it in my vaginal canal to slice my pubis symphysis. Yes. Do you know how difficult it is to get to that piece of cartilage that holds the female pelvis bone together? Mm-hmm. Even surgeons can't get to that unless you use a military laser from a foreign country. But, you know, that brings me back to my point here in this story. So like I was saying with O.J. Simpson, not to focus too much on that scenario, if it's case law, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's case law. But this, congratulations, OJ, and I'm not one to just grab articles off news stations and then say, I support this. No. I've done years and years of research, unfortunately, and I've come to a decision, actually, on many different topics. You started it. I didn't invite myself. Just remember that. So basically, I've noticed that everything bothers the Los Angeles Police Department. And it's mostly from two separate categories, only based on research and direct, exact experience. I am the source. I don't need to give you a citation. I am the source. And until you remove those blinds from your eyes and stop living in la la land, then you'll see the truth. Not just pretending and then flying off into Cinderella land or Tinkerbell land to run from your reality. Two things from the Los Angeles Police Department that attacks me. The Latino female, the Hispanic female. Hey, this is based on experience. So I suggest you hold your attacks to yourself. And that's my point right there. You need to get psychological help for your anger management. Because if you blow up the World Trade Center and then I start to speak about it, what gives you the right to start a fight saying I said something? Do you see how stupid that really, realistically, and logically is? Do you ever look at yourself in a mirror instead of doing your eyebrows? Instead of stenciling your eyebrows and doing, stringing of your eyebrows and then presenting eyebrows on a daily basis for trafficking. For someone told me just a few days ago, I said, I love your dress. No, I said, I love that blouse. You're always dressed so nice. And the person said, I know, that's why I bought it. Now, you think what you'd like to think about what I just said, but I know what it meant, and she knows what it meant when she told me. And she doesn't have any income, just like most people in Los Angeles. But holding your head up high can either mean two things. I said, well, you know what, if people have to, human traffic, that's a form of slavery, and I won't bother them about it. But when they become violently ill and vicious toward a victim, and they start boastfully using trafficking to say that they can kill you, they can incarcerate you, I can put you on death row, I can steal your kids, and I can matter of fact, my father was murdered recently because of human Latino traffickers and Bangladeshi traffickers and gay traffickers and transvestite traffickers that work together here in Los Angeles. And it could be like my shoestring was tied the wrong way, and then they say, or I brushed my teeth. Like, let's say I'm just laying down, so I could not be speaking to anyone anywhere in the city. But they need to watch everything I'm doing. And I tried this from, and all of the traffickers are Muslim, because I directly spoke to them, and they confessed to me that they're trafficking. So they do anything their tricks want them to do, or their Johns want them to do. They inject estrogen. When they start trafficking, it doesn't matter if the man is married or not. They need to scar him in ways to make him unusable for his marriage. So basically, their goal is to see something. So whatever they see bothers them, and that's where it begins. So I did a research project, and it's come out with some great results. And I love those results. I love those results like a marriage. and it's going to be my marriage, and I am going to deliver it to the United States. Well, I already delivered it to the United States government, because when you're doing research, they have to double check. I mean, they have to triple check they have to quadruple check everything before you're allowed to actually process anything on any documentation, any website, anything. So they knew before anyone that while I was conducting research, I would need an unidentified third party to use as an outlet. So we chose an outlet for anger management, with ongoing psychological checks, ongoing this is the most violent and disgusting area, and it can be great again. It can be recovered. I have nothing to do. Just because I said great again, why can't I be a supporter of Donald Trump? Do I have to be sleeping with him? I'm in Los Angeles and he's in Washington, D.C. So if I use a word in my country, this is my country, I'm a U.S. citizen. Are you going to tell me that it's not my country? And that's why you're mentally sick. So, I can prove a million points in one sentence, because it's easy. I do not have to wake up on a daily basis in this type of manner unless someone else is violating me in some way or another. So, back to the O.J. Simpson point. I know that O.J. Simpson did not kill this woman, even if it's a scenario or an example. Let me say, this is how homosexuals that work for the police department, or police officers for LAPD or the county sheriff. It could be a homosexual county sheriff female who's dominant, and they're mentally ill in a way that I've dated one guy, for example. I've dated this one guy, and a Hispanic female county sheriff noticed this. So she stepped away from her desk and she began following me around like she was gathering, and you would wonder, how can they keep track of a million different unrelated law-violating subjects and topics of someone else's personal sexual relationships when they have to tend to people who violated the law? They have to tend to people, and here we go. We're going to see when I talk about the county sheriff, now we're going to get the number and identify this next police vehicle that's coming by with the sirens wailing. So they're listening to me while I'm in my apartment, and they're going to pass, and it's fire department, LAFD paramedic 209 again. So it's currently 12:34 in the afternoon on November 30th, Thursday, and it's the same ambulance from the downtown LA Skid Row Fire Department who are, I don't have time to explain further. This is a summary, but they're homosexual, number one. Okay, I've done thorough research. I've even walked up to them and met them in person because they wouldn't stop wailing their sirens. I had a gas leak in my apartment, and I called the fire department, and they refused to show up. I said, can you disconnect the cables? I need you to come immediately. There's a gas leak. And they laughed on the phone and said, we don't take care of those type of things. But while I'm speaking in a recording, they have time to leisurely waste North American workers' tax money that could be buying a piece of bread for children in a working family's household. It could be caring for another sick individual. It could be caring for an endangered animal species. It could be caring for an oil spill. But because of his personal homosexual terroristic state of mind, no one's brought him to the attention and captured enough evidence to get him fired from terrorizing people. So even though he's a criminal and he wants to pester people, so I just woke up. So he does this when I open my eyes. So while I'm falling into sleep, I can feel myself getting raped, number one. So it's called socialist rape. So it's where they, and when there's heavy breathing, there's a rapid heartbeat while you're sleeping, and then the need to masturbate. Okay, if I'm cooking and I'm celibate, in the state of mind of celibacy, and I'm listening to spiritual videos or anything that can tackle the terrorist of this area, or I'm trying to write an essay or something, why would I just drop down on the floor, fall into a deep sleep, and then begin having thoughts of screwing myself while an ambulance is wailing his sirens? Because the terrorists in this area do this to children. They do this to homeless people of all grossness. And that's why there's a difference between terrorism, rape, and basic domestic violence. There's no such thing as domestic violence in this area, because there's LAPD officers that have taken, for example, there's a black woman who's really tiny. She's like 5'4" or something. And there's a huge Hispanic community that's constantly mocking me for my height. And I say, well, you know what? I'm half white German and half black French. I didn't say Creole. I said half black French. Sometimes I feel like I need to get a dictionary out and cook it and feed it to people, because no matter what you say, no matter what you type, they're so brainwashed that they just can't hear anything that anyone has to say, which is a part of the terrorist attacks against me now, because I won a pageant long ago. And let me give you this example. I won the Hal Jackson's Talented Teens of Washington pageant, and I gained the nickname Queen Rachel long ago. Okay, I was chosen to be in the Torchlight Parade representing the African American community and the CAY, Central Area Youth Association community, as the youngest person to compete for a women's scholarship for Miss Seafair. Okay, and I didn't win because I was so busy watching the older ladies that were seniors almost of the University of Washington that I was just so amazed in watching them that I wasn't necessarily competing against them. I was like, wow, look at how she's wearing. I was only a child, but I had already won 2 gold medals in 1 week, which earned me thousands of hard cash. And what did I do? Just brought it back home to my mother. And she was on Social Security disability because she had already been a victim of a cancerless radiation treatment. and they had gotten jealous of her because she was always attracting like foreign white men, like Polish, German, like my father. She was attracting, you know, beautiful men, which and they are beautiful. I'd like to hear you say that they're not. Tell me they're not beautiful in my face today in 2017 like you did when I was a child. Yes, you finally managed to murder him January 31st of 2017. And every time I spoke of my father, you told me he was dead. You told me, I don't know who that is. I'd like for you to walk up to me and tell me that today. Because there's lots of Germans that are white men that I could gather as a support system in a meeting, televised, since you only understand media, televised, so that we can discuss, why exactly do you hate German men so much? Is it just because he made me? Is that your only sickness, your only brain sickness? But then when you backbite, because that's what I'm told a lot, why do you backbite? Well, why do you tell me the stupid, idiotic things that you tell me? Do you make sense? See, sometimes when your enemy tells you things, the only reason they can't understand what you're saying to them, the only reason they can't comprehend what you're saying to them is because you're not speaking their language. So I'm very fluent in Spanish now. It's not about Spanish people across the world. So if you have no idea who I am, then I'm obviously not talking about you, am I? But if you've terrorized me enough and I am mentioning you, then apparently wherever I'm located from year to year is where those people are located of that racial group or of that language speaking group. So if you're not involved, then you're not going to prevent me out of fear of getting banned across the world from protecting myself against those groups that are terrorizing me based on their sickness. And I'm still going to identify who you are and what language you speak. Right? So you use the word backbiting to me, and I'm going to use the word backbiting to you, because that's the only thing that you cherish and comprehend. Yes? Whether you're worshiping Jesus, whether you're worshiping Allah. Yeah. Here goes the siren again. He's coming back again. Soon as I said Jesus and Allah, then here he comes again. Yes? He must be a little angered at what I'm saying privately inside of my home. So I guess his opinion matters so much. He's bigger than the President of the United States, isn't he? Whoever he is in that little ambulance just owns the Earth planet, doesn't he? Right in his little homosexual brain, he owns the Earth. So do I just randomly walk into your elementary school and begin nitpicking that you couldn't afford to change your child into proper clothing? Did I make fun of how many times she sucks dick while she's residing in a trafficking house, living with some woman's husband who pretends to be the roommate of a family just for molestation purposes? No. I have an agenda of my own. I'm so important to myself, naturally. We should all value ourselves so much that we're occupied when we wake up and go to sleep on what we need to do to care for us, ourselves first and foremost. Not just wailing sirens while we're tuned in with little antennas in our brain, just trying to focus on one apartment out of 80 billion windows across a county. Do you make sense, or are you crazy? Do you look at yourself? The only reason you have that job is because no one else wants it. Did you ever look at it from that perspective? It's not that any crazy idea you have is correct, like wailing sirens. Do you wail sirens when the pedophiles, which are about 20 to 30,000 strong all over LA County, including government officials. So do you wail sirens when that little girl is getting doped up with sleeping aids over the counter purchased from your local CVS pharmacy? Do you wail the sirens when he's in the middle of exasperating his muscles? No, you're nowhere around. You want to give him peace and quiet, don't you? Yes. You want to be respectful to him because he deserves his special time. They have this, another big excuse they use here in Los Angeles. Every time they see a man raping a child, they say, oh, they say, oh, she's special. It's never he is a man and she is a woman. Everything is gay. Everything. And if it's not, then I don't know where that population is. And that just proves my point right there. Because I'm not gay. But whoever is terrorizing me must be gay, right? Right? Or else why would I talk about it so much? Then there you have it. And then every time you say, you say, oh gosh, I caught him molesting that girl inside the public laundromat. She's only 4 or 5 years old, and his muscle was hardened inside of his jeans. It was sticking out. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was disgusting. So I asked him, are you her dad? And he says with a big smile, yes. So they always have an excuse. Oh, it's his culture. Okay, fine. So that's his business. It's his culture. He loves her. Okay, well, you keep your culture to yourself and stay out of my marriage or my relationships or anything that I'm doing. But then they come back and then they actually hired an LAPD officer from Mexico, kind of young. He drove a Dodge Durango around 2012. And he was the one that opened my eyes to the fact that it's a business for them to murder people after finding people that fit their pair of shoes. So they murder people according to their shoe size. That's how the murders of identity theft start. So they see a business, they say, wow, that's a nice business. Is he or she from Mexico? Because they want to murder their own family members before they murder anyone else, because they like murdering people that look alike. See, if you have the same hair texture, if many black people look like many black people. Mm-hmm. That's why they keep telling me, if I could only just make her skin look darker inside. We don't want anyone to see her hair texture. We don't want anyone, because I just want to steal from her so bad. Everything she's ever had. Murdered her family, murdered her mother, murdered her father. If I could just murder her father, then there won't be anyone left. We could steal from her brother. Her brother was building a house. We were the contractors in Houston, Texas. If we could just bury him under. Someone walked up to me from Mexico and said, yeah, we're working on contracting for building your brother's house. If we could just bury him under the ground in a sewer drain hole and keep him alive and just pour water inside so that he can see and feel the agonizing pain of all the shit we stole from him. Black men like him, whose first language is French, don't deserve shit in this country. That's what they told me, right here in Los Angeles. Then they drive around, and they keep saying, oh, Chiquita is Mexican. No, she's not. She's not Mexican at all. She's black. So if she was born black, unless she married a Mexican man, just like your fake vitiligo skin disease in Los Angeles that you place on people you want to scar, like you've been doing to me with this Michael Jackson thing, all of a sudden I have vitiligo on my lower back. Well, because you practice biological terrorism. It's not a disease. It's something you mix together and it touched my skin or it was orally consumed and then splotches occurred. It's not God-made, it's man-made. Whatever told you that was true. Just like putting ocean water animals or worms inside, worm eggs inside of people's food and serving it at public restaurants into controlled research groups to see how long they could live with something growing inside of their intestinal tract. Just like replacing someone's rib cage with false ribs and stuffing the rib cage, the artificial rib cage, with a snake egg or a snake worm or something. I mean, you're psychotic. So I have to speak your language. If you're an airline pilot, chances are, no, I have a better scenario. The judicial court system. Okay? Do you know why attorneys exist? Well, we won't say attorneys because I used to work as an attorney, and attorneys are not friends with lawyers. Okay, so the A word is not a friend of the L word. Okay, I was never a lawyer. I was an attorney. Attorneys only work with two people in the court system, in the criminal court system, or in the civil court system, mostly the criminal court system. We work with the prosecutor and the judge, but we're not friends with the prosecutor either. Yes, because he's electrocuting you. He's the prosecutor. We're only friends with the judge. It doesn't matter. You see, you also, while I'm speaking, you have to, like giving a loan to someone, you only loan what you're willing to lose. And when you know you're around psychotic lunatics who take everything you say and use it against you, you only share what you're willing to lose. And if you've examined the information that you're sharing, or allowing to get used up. Allowing is the key word. If you're only sharing what you're allowing to get used up, that means you've thoroughly audited. That means you've thoroughly audited what you have begun to share. And then you put a boundary on it, a cap limit. You said, that's the only amount. Let's see what they do with this 1%. Devour it. And then the results are that they devour it. They switch the words around. They switch the destiny of it around. They think that manipulating the 1% you let out is going to empower them against you, focused only on something that identifies you. And then you say, well, okay, after I audited that 1%, the 1% wasn't worth a dime, so I was willing to share it. I allowed it to get shared, even though I own it. I allowed it to get shared. So if it, that 1%, wants to mingle and mix with the 99% of lunatics, then it's fine by me. You see, because that 1% wasn't worth too much to begin with. They were yearning and desiring some things that I would never participate in. And I've already lived that life and gained wisdom from a different set of lunatics that were a little more sophisticated. So as we grow older, we only have a certain amount of nutrients, physical nutrients, psychological nutrients, spiritual nutrients that are stored within us that we have to expel only in a way that comes back to us immediately to nourish us in a recycling manner that we can live off of. It's like recycling energy. So we measure up our priorities. We manage our time. And we choose and control, even though we can't control everything. We cannot control everything. Not speaking of society, speaking of ourselves. I can control if I'm going to use the toilet to pee. Now, listen to what I'm saying. Now, this is how I do research. What I just said was I can control if I use the toilet to pee. And then I can measure the psychosis, sickness, and illness of the state of mind of Los Angeles Police Department, because as soon as they hear this, being ridden with retardation, it's a form of retardation, because normal humans, it's not racism, it's retardation. Because I've been around police my whole life, and this is the highest level of retardation I've ever recognized. I mean, it's the highest level, so that I began doing research, and it just doesn't add up to any form of racism. And even though they'd like to make it a Jasper event to cover up their retardation, it's too late. Because everyone's going to know you for how you function, what drives your personal vendetta against people, whereas your private miseries aren't properly taken care of as they're supposed to be. And then when you do make sense and you do have the evidence of everything, they need to twist it and manipulate it into a homosexual ordeal in order to cope with the logic behind whatever intelligence I express. So now with O.J. Simpson, for example. It's an example because they wanted to use it as an example so that others don't step on their toes, so to speak. So here you have a black guy real quickly. You have a black guy. He was a little sports star. Then he attracted a fairly beautiful, actually she was extremely beautiful, Nicole Brown Simpson. Okay, and you see in this lifestyle, way back when he had first married her, LA was not as dangerous as it is today. It's only in a different way that it's dangerous. More terrorism today. There's actual terrorism today. Back then, it was just gang violence. It's far beyond gang violence now. It's strictly terrorism. So here we have way back when you have this little sports star guy who's fairly popular or very popular. Then you have, he scores the white wife. He scores, she's got the suntan going on. She's got the streaky sunshine California blonde hair. She's got, you know, they have these biracial children. He's got the bank account, the money. And I've actually never seen any sports star manage his life in a level of popularity as he actually did. And so to top it off, though, I'll tell you why LAPD began planning to frame him for murder. You see, they didn't want him to die. You see, he's still alive, right? Because someone that was jealous of Nicole wanted what she had. So it's called a crime of passion. Okay? So what happens is they keep the penis alive. Okay? Because that's the one that they want and desire for themselves. But they still want to punish him, but they need him to be under his control, which is in prison 24 hours a day. And then once he makes it to prison, then in their head, in their imagination, they're in a marriage with him. This has happened already to me here. This has been a long, rigorous research process. And there's tons of LAPD officers that are currently repeating the same exact thing. And they bring misery and agonizing pain to their victims silently. And the only reason they're silent is because they need it to go on for as long as they possibly can, because they're void inside of themselves, the ones that are doing this. And those are the ones that shouldn't be working in a police department. Those are the ones that haven't been they're obviously retarded. You can tell by facial features they're retarded. And why do they have a gun license? Is my first question. Some officers have acquired their position through the mafia through identity theft, where some police officer, they murdered their family members, they come from another country, they murdered their family members, and then they just send a member of the cocaine cartel in, and then they match the hair texture. Then you'll get some black men that are cops that they'll murder and they'll say, oh, this is a black guy too. But then he says, I'm from No. And then he says, you know, they get married to a Latino or something. There's many different ways to do it, you know, because, you know, only the biracial community is very hard to steal the identity of. And again, this is the second focus where I say they only focus on something that you give them a challenge for. So, and that's a high level of retardation. So here you have a gun license, a highly retarded cop. I like people to understand what I'm saying quickly. I don't need to explain anything or use, you know, politically correct terminology. According to the community that I'm in, I must use certain terminology. The key is for people to comprehend, not for them to be left in the dark of scariness and monsters. We want them to comprehend. And my first thought is, instead of capturing people with retardation, capture a diagnosis for your retardation. Instead of arresting people because your judgment is of retardation, there's tons of work for special people. I said for special people. But for people who are track whores that want to jump ahead and be in a position of authority without earning it is beyond me. It's kind of like me being black and not allowed to represent the U.S. national team in the Winter Olympics a second quarter around. Because as I can recall, no one wanted me to go to the LA Kings ice rink in El Segundo. I was called a nigger and yelled at and told to get out of the ice rink immediately by none other than a black man. Who's obviously receiving very good reward for that incident he did to me. Secondly, the head concussion, whereas public session blades were sharpened in a rounded way, and then the employee gave them to me for me to intentionally get a head concussion, and I am 0% accident rate for 5 years. That's the second time. But the first time was a warning. The second time was a side blow to the head. Interesting, huh? How you could just murder people based on your judgment, but never get a diagnosis for your mental retardation. The difference between a special person and a mental retard is that a mental retard has the capacity to snap and practice violence and murder people without ever. I know someone named Mohammed Sujan who the mosque had wanted me to enter into an arranged marriage with. Okay, all he ever did was yell at me. Okay, so in Islam, for example, he's from Bangladesh. In Islam, for example, here now there's the music with the bass passing by. That's another way. That's the gang terrorist alert to the neighborhood that there's an exchange of anals. Okay, so even when you talk or mention something, they like to say that it's of prostitution. Even if you're a member of the clergy, they like to take targets and say, and they want to say, oh, I'm a member of the clergy. You're not, you're a prostitute. They'll go to the ends of the earth to make certain you never reach it to a Bible or a Quran or anything. So I like to bring stadium lights to people like this. Their God is prostitution. Now, let me tell you, and another reason they do it is to distract people. So obviously there's wiretaps in here where I'm speaking, because I'm not talking very loud, am I? And I'm also getting watched through the faceplate in the Alcatel phone that I'm using that gets sold at 7-Eleven stores. And Zanoon Wireless in Bangladesh. It's an AT&T device, though. It was manufactured there by the AT&T Corporation, which sponsors the Team USA. Okay, so I'm going to have to wrap this up, but the points that I wanted to make was quickly O.J. Simpson, trafficking, and also this police thing and of identity theft. So let me go ahead and continue reading this. Now, on the table of contents, I read learning boundaries versus the acquisition of legislating boundaries based on pedophile, homosexual, human, and animal conjugation trafficking. Yes, dogs are very popularly utilized in anal trafficking here. Okay, it is what it is, and it's the truth. It's like a social fad to traffic dogs. Okay, and then yes, and okay, then U.S. Patriot Act for national security measures. Second, okay, so the U.S. Patriot Act should be used for national security measures, but instead, they always need to replicate things to focus on what they think the law should be. Well, what about me? What about me? What about me? What about me? Okay, so get on your surfboard and go surfing, even though you're retarded. Okay, so even though you're retarded, get inside the airplane and smash it into the World Trade Center coming from Los Angeles County. I don't like to waste time in making a point. I like to speak in the manner, if you can react to what I'm saying, that means you understood me, which means I did the right thing in communicating a point to you, didn't I? But since your reactions are so violent 100% of the time, because you neglect focusing on taking responsibility for your own actions and your own personality and how you speak to people and how your actions affect others in society and how your terrorism affects others in society, then there's just no way to speak to you than the way that you comprehend. Therefore, my point is proven. I communicate well, and I adjust the way that I communicate according to the current audience or environment. Now, U.S. Patriot Act for national security measures versus utilizing congressional laws and legislative bills passed to strengthen backward desires. They desire to invade America. Everything they see. Well, if I could just do this, if I were just in office, that's amazing. Do your research. There's a person of every race in Congress today. That's awesome. The United States is a melting pot of racial groups. Why not? But when you want to be every race on the planet and every animal species, then it's time for a mental checkup. Let me clarify myself. When a Latino who's not an actress, who's not in the entertainment industry, who's not in the music industry, wants to control society by damaging and harming people and saying, I'm Chinese, I can do that too. I can do what the president of Chinese does. I'm the president of Mexico. I'm the president of Colombia. I'm the president of El Salvador. I'm the president of Rwanda. I'm the president of, I'm the president of, I'm the president of, I'm the president of, I'm the president of. I can control the USS Carl Vincent. I can be Osama bin Laden's wife. I can be Omar bin Laden's wife. I can be President Obama's wife. Well, why don't you slow down and stop destroying anything in existence and focus on you? I can be Miss Seafair. If only I could just pay $100 million in cocaine. Because it looks like she had this on her record, like in like 2001, she represented Miss Seafair, or she was running for the court of Miss Seafair. And so today, while she's enrolled in DeVry University, I can't let her get any bachelor's degree. I can't. I have to go back to Seattle, and I have to backtrack whatever's on her resume, and I have to read her emails and hack into her email account, and I have to know who Hal Jackson is and cause a heart attack in him in New York City and say that I'm better and gather all Costa Ricans in New York, and then I have to come back here, and then I have to prove and pay 100 children in slave trafficking and to somebody who's Latino and works in office, and then I have to rape her kids in Eastern Washington, and then I have to get my face on the Miss Seafair board for 2017 and 2018 just because I have to prove. You're scaring me, and you have to prove that you're not a threat to my country's national security is what you've earned a gold medal in. Point blank. And that's exactly why I won that entitlement 2 weeks in a row. You don't just walk up and hand a piece of artwork into the NAACP Olympics of the Mind competition as a 15-year-old and get a $2,000 or $3,000 scholarship placed inside your hand. You don't fly to the International and eat at Sylvia's restaurant away from your mother. You don't enter a relationship with a naval chief that teaches you the ins and outs of a Navy ship commissioned and parked on the dock of a Navy base at the age of 17 and a half. And so what I'm asking you is that whatever plague has caused subliminal messages to deteriorate your level of logical thinking, I suggest that you slow down, and I'm begging you. And we're going to go see which police is blowing his sirens right now that's going to pass in front of my window. So it's another LAFD Skid Row truck, and he turned off from another street to prevent me from identifying him, which means that they're currently listening to me identifying the numbers that I just did about 20 minutes ago inside of this recording. So he's nearby somewhere, either in a product I purchased from a local 99-cent only store. I have a solar garden light in a vase right here that I purchased. They could have put it in that. It could be in the faceplate of my Alcatel phone, my HP laptop, from CBS Corporation. That's on a home group library. And so this is the third time that when I say only one specific, it's good not to look out the windows also while in the middle of a recording, because they try to distract from the topic and the subject. Okay, and when you're not visualizing the gestures, the computerized robotic gestures that are outside on the sidewalk to alter what you're saying, then that's when they start wailing their sirens, because it's the only voice that they have. So they invade everything. They don't get invited to anything. They invade everything. And that's how they show up at events. 80% of the time, these people are shunned from doing anything. So they can't stand to not get heard. So this is a private recording that I'm doing. So she's gone back inside, stemming right here from Los Angeles. She's on a terrorist vendetta across America, where she's lost her mind. And it's not from a liking. She's not jealous due to a relationship we're in. And when I use the word she, it represents her entire community. So there's a photo placed of Miss Seafair 2017-2018 on the website of seafair.com. Okay, so every time in Los Angeles she terrorizes me or hacks into my bank account, first she was bothered by the last name I have, because here the tricks that Latina women use to ease the pain of human trafficking and child trafficking is to date only Iranian Jewish men and Arabians, but not so much Arabians, because so it's not so much that Arabians aren't their first choice to human traffic. Out of all persons available to them for large-scale baby trafficking, the only people that makes it easy upon them are Iranians. Not only are they smaller in size in the genital area, but they get more pleasure out of cultural trafficking. So based on the land that they come from and the country they come from and their religious values, they would be the most highly likely to let Latinos loathe around for hours while consuming resources. So now what they're doing is they're desperately sending messages into my cell phone right now. So they're sending message after message. So now that I'm talking about the Jewish clientele of Latino child trafficking and the massiveness of it all and why they do it, then now they want to keep sending messages into the phone to automatically shut off the recorder. And this is what I mean by terrorism. So a terrorist is someone who have no other options in their imagination other than getting an image expressed of goodness and wholesomeness. No matter what they do, they could murder, rape, kill, steal, rob, violate the law 1,000 times a day. But they don't want anyone to recognize their crimes. So I'm speaking of Latino women murder not people they think, I mean, not people that are established as prostitutes, but women they feel intimidated by that could steal their position, not in marriage, but in human anal trafficking and baby trafficking. So what happens is, just like French and France is a Romance language, a European Romance language, which is my first language, my primary birth language. You know, excuse the sirens in the background. They're desperately trying to interfere with what I'm saying right now. And this is the whole core of everything, of every problem in existence for me right now, of my father's murder, of attempting to steal my identity, of everything. So basically, and this is the current terrorist problem going on right now that affects me from morning till night, as you can imagine. Why would someone go out of their way to wail sirens only when I touch up on a certain subject? Because it's true and real, and they don't want that privilege to ever come out of existence. They don't want it to ever become extinct. That's their bread and butter. That's their life sustenance. Iran is their, and the culture of Iran makes human trafficking and baby trafficking the easiest trafficking ordeal so that they can feel married. They can feel like they're reproducing babies for a purpose, not for sex trafficking, not for slavery, right? My last name is not of Jewish heritage by any means. So I don't have anything to lose here. But their fear and ignorance and illiteracy of my last name signed in Farsi from right to left, being Sakhi, their illiteracy of where the name comes from forces them to react just by reading in one of several ways, and I'll explain those different. This is their reaction. Wow, we can replace her with someone that's on our team and practice more human trafficking. Look at this name. This name is from Afghanistan. We can steal this name and replace her with someone that we can sell on the track. Someone with silky hair, or we could find a light-skinned black person who we've been molesting since she was born in Los Angeles. And we could sell her for $1,000 an hour in trafficking. Let's see what size shoes she wears. They've been trying to work with Daniel Bond, with Barack Obama, with people associated to Michael Jackson. They've been with Bangladeshi prostitutes that happen to be homosexual men and people from India. They've been trying so hard to copycat a clone of me. And they're not willing to allow anyone to see anything that I do, because in their head, everyone has to see something to believe it. And then they came to a roadblock about 20,000 attempts later for identity theft. And they said, if we just murder her father and gather enemy support of people she hurt her whole life. Now, you have to get inside their retarded mind and figure out what their definition of hurting people actually means. what their state of mind is and what the definition of this really is. So you have to ask them, well, what do you mean by her hurting people? Do you like hurting people? So you'll get a lot of gay white American females that are men with penises that just randomly, they like to do cliffhanger terrorist attacks in public. So they notice that my outlet for their rage, and they built this rage inside of their bodies based on one-sided conversations and anger. Because remember, I just don't do anything with them. So, and that's proven because they started to say that I was antisocial and that it's a mental disorder. Now, if you said it to gain another problem in my personality, then it's already established that you've said you can't ever have access to me anywhere because I'm antisocial, right? People that are diagnosed with antisocialism means that you never ever have access to me. Now that's popular overseas if you want to be married to a president of the Russian Federation, or if you'd like to be married or engaged to get married. Yes, actually, President Vladimir Putin is a dictator who will never lose his job. Now, I guarantee you, if I bring that to the attention of Latinos, they're going to try and murder Vladimir Putin. But for the national security of the citizens of my country, I don't want to scare Mr. Putin. And right now, I'll say, Mr. Putin is safe. I love my country primarily. However, and my allegiance is first and foremost and prioritized to my country as a citizen and a civilian without any ties of employment to any military to the United States of America, regardless of any pain I feel. Humans are born to encounter problems. And we're built to find solutions. Even those people that are characterized medically as being special. So regardless of what our capacity is, we could have full capacity yesterday and not tomorrow. But those that are boastfully, the reason I speak the way that I speak is because I speak in an intelligent manner that respects all races, religions, and everything. Intellectual status, disabilities, the American Disability Administration, any and everything, first and foremost. It's not because I have a disability. It's because I have respect for human species. I have a certain level of respect for living things and compassion for those that have passed on. And like I said, for national security, I won't allow one racial group who has a smaller group in a smaller area going on some maniac trip of trying to overpower everything in existence. I won't allow that teeny tiny group to terrorize me into saying something about another country's president, which endangers, as a result, in a domino pizza effect, the national security of my fellow civilians, my neighbors, fellow civilians that have allegiance to our country, just as the next person, whether they're homeless or not. They enjoy residing on this land. It's just a part of human nature to experience trials and tribulations. It really doesn't matter in what manner. It's just normal. But terrorism is something that occurs in a violent way or a subtle way, persistently, without ceasing or without any foreseen of ceasement or ceasing, that causes ongoing artificial endangerments. That means someone wants to be God in their undiagnosed state of mind and then refuses to stop inflicting pain. And I'm hoping that that group didn't choose me based on my prior achievements as a hostage to inflict pain upon in blackmail to receive money from Bill Gates, a longtime friend of mine, childhood friend. And he could be more than that if he chooses to. And he is a participant on the basis of however he and his lawyers chooses to define his participation in the Microsoft Corporation or any other affiliated organizations that he's a participant in, which I do not keep track of. But since this small group of terrorists insists on finding ways to enrage people based on resumes or healthcare systems, information systems, big data systems, and they're insistent on proving that they can replicate my history, but be better and bigger. Do you understand what the past means? The past only is a citation for us to utilize as a means of failures or successes that we can either improve or put a stop to in the future, so that we're utilizing our current time here on the universe properly without excessive waste. But some groups and cluster cells of terrorists can't let it go. So instead of mocking my participation in the Joe Williams Memorial Cup championships for girls, Group C, I suggest you look at why I participated in it and the timeline of travels that I organized to participate in such an event. And if you can't comprehend why, because you're fearful of who would see me schedule an air flight all by myself, because that would make me a travel agent. That would make me safe. I highly suggest that you figure out why I'm recording this as I'm speaking today. And I highly suggest you figure out why I'm publishing what I'm publishing in this book that's complete and finished, that I started in 15 minutes and completed in under an hour. Oh, it's a book and it's finished. And I won't need any more time to add on anything else to it. You're very imaginative. Let your imagination flow. Flow with the wind, because that's what you're professional at doing. Taking one photograph and building up on it. especially in places you're not invited. Yes, you love invading parties and raining on parades, don't you? So I'll let you use your imagination. So as your classroom teacher, I want you to take that picture of what I've captured of you, and I want you to build on it and crawl yourselves out of your own activities. I'm the author, and and if you create one more lie to reach for the stars and bust open the Himalayan mountains with your undiscovered disease of whatever species you are that seem to be plaguing and spreading across Los Angeles County that I'm unsure whether or not have spread over the United States. Before you create one more lie to stop me, the ambassador of the National Health Corps Services of America, which was not 8 years ago, but you stole that too. So enough with creating titles and labels and profiling. Just take this picture of what I've captured, this snapshot, since you have a hatred of people beginning things and finishing things. You finish it. It's your responsibility. Here, I'm cursing you with finishing your own story. So you're incomplete. Did I finish raising my children? No. Do I feel you finish? You hijack them, you finish raising them. Don't follow the leader because it looks like she has a more promising platform and infrastructure for prostitution audiences that'll raise the dollar bill for you trafficking her children, which was your initial reason for stealing them, right? But we're not going to focus on that because those are your kids. And do not approach me with them. That's a warning, or I will get a no contact order. So I think I mentioned this after you hijack them, that they're going to come back years later after roboticizing them, abusing them, beating them, torturing them, and then they're going to put some icing on the melted down brains that they beat into terrorism, and then they're going to pour some whipped cream on them and put a cherry on top, and then freeze that image and then send them back to me, and while I'm sleeping they'll murder me in my sleep. No, thank you. They're your kids. Raise them. Finish what you started. Everything you see me do, you have a psychopathic, uninvented disease of hijacking everything. You're not slave mastering, because if that's the case, there wouldn't be blacks involved. Yes, Negroes are involved with you. Asians are involved. Since you, when I say you want to play the race game, the racial, politically correct terminology race game, every time I say, you call me the N-word, yeah? You like doing that through gestures? Yes, that's why you hijacked my kids, because I'm a nigger and you're not. Yes, remember when you told me, when I said, hey, have you seen my son lately? Of all the humiliating things in the world, you steal what you can't create that was premeditated to begin with. No wonder he's just like you, a terrorist, because you made him. It was your idea. You used me as the vending machine to genetically engineer what you couldn't. So enough about that. But I asked, well, how's he doing? Oh, it's okay. He's fine. I show him a picture of you all the time. So come to find out, they were showing him a picture of me and then electrocuting him every time he looked at it and said, Mommy. But hey, let's move on. I'd like to leave you with this as a personal summary. I'd like to leave you with this. I'd like to leave you with the personalized summary of the fact that I've been granted a sort of angelic resiliency. Do you know what that means? No, you don't, because you don't know anything that I say. You don't know the meaning of anything I communicate because you're not human. That's why. I'm human. And if I'm an animal, then you shouldn't be working at SeaWorld, because if you're human and I'm the animal, then the animals at SeaWorld don't want you to use them anymore for circus and entertainment so you can survive off of caging them. So if I'm an animal and you can't understand what I'm saying because I'm a nigger and I don't speak human English, then the reason you can't understand me is because you're human. So I'd like to let you know that all the animals in the Barnum and Bailey circus that you're enslaving, I'd like to let you know that all the birds that you're doing research on and all the eagles that you steal and hijack to use on your quarters and your currency across the world, I want to let you know that those animals don't want you to use them to survive and receive paychecks any longer. Okay, for your next giggle and your laughter. So if you could stop supporting yourselves by trafficking animals in entertainment industries, including in motion films, then because you don't understand my animal language. Okay, so either way you twist and turn and manipulate it to your benefit, Disney, we don't want you to use rats as Minnie and Mickey mascots anymore because they're animals and I'm a rat. So the rats, because you can't see yourselves, you're human. You can only see me as a retarded rat, right? So I'm a nigger, I'm a retarded rat. I'm anything that draws attention away from your mental psychosis that is neglected. You can't hear me, so I must talk loud to emphasize over your siren where you need me to shut up when I'm talking about your baby trafficking. So it's called my siren. I'm not enraged. I can walk outside of my door right now and go babysit children and go play myself at a swimming pool, at the ocean. I could sing. I could do anything because I'm not you. I have resiliency. You get my analogy now? Do you know what the definition of analogy is? It's hard for me to communicate with people who haven't read the dictionary. It's really difficult. Do you want me to bark it or squeal it like an American eagle? Do you want me to say it in 1,000 different Bantu village languages from Africa and India and Asia? Or do you want me to say it in Russian? Analogy. With the World Wide Web, we have dictionaries digitally available for those of you equipped with working fast internet equipped cell phones and devices, right? Okay, thank you. So, moving along. The next thing is this. I'm going to teach you about citations and who's in who and who jumped in whose body and who played in this movie and who played in that movie. And that was me. And that was you too. And you too and me and me. Those are all trigger words of brainwashing for prejudice, racism. But no, there's Negroes here participating in Los Angeles County, along with Orientals, South Koreans, Japanese, Chinese, Asians, Bangladeshis, Muslims, Christians, atheists, homosexuals and heterosexuals, married couples and single couples, employed, unemployed, and most of all, the dirtiest of the filthiest homeless bums ever to exist. So it's not racism. We've extinguished that. So we're going to call it terrorism because it's all based on me. Oh, wait, but there's child abuse. Oh, that's why. That's why they're doing it to me. Because Blanket Jackson used to be my child before CPS stole him. And then I abused him, and they're protecting him now, all of his human trafficking tricks. Oh, wait a minute. He's not involved in human trafficking. So no one's ever exposed to him in an endangered environment to where anyone would actually know enough from the mafia, which is human trafficking, the mafia to come back and harm me and abuse me like he was abused by me, right? But wait a minute, that's not even my child, right? So we're going to extinguish that excuse as well. That's not my child. But wait a minute. So if it's not racism and it's not child abuse and it's not anything and it hops and skips from sport to sport and activity to activity and even to basic walking down the street where death threats of I'm going to be in a wheelchair is more aggressive than ever, by rigging electrical sockets and light fixtures inside of every apartment that I live in, suffocating, then is it genocide? Well, no, because everyone's still here, enjoying themselves on a day-to-day basis. I'm here. I see. I feel. I am attacked by all racial groups. I go from city and town to town. Everyone's not genocided. They're still fully aggressive, going strong and hard. So what would be the reason that they're trying to capture me constantly? Oh, she's Muslim. She's listening to Muslim sheikhs online, Sheikh Riyadul Haq. Interesting. That's a good one. We're the military. This is not Los Angeles. We're protecting our country. That's a great excuse too. I wouldn't have eliminated that one either unless I noticed you were trying to sell children to the man in the video, as well as black gay Muslims. And then I wouldn't have eliminated that if you wouldn't have started following me after I watched his videos into coffee shops and to all bus stops, trying to sit children next to me to traffic, because you have the spiritual belief of the mafia believing that he's in me while I'm watching the video. So you think he's looking at the child you're trying to sell to him, that you sit next to me, because you don't like me to be around your kids ever. So why only do you suffocate me with your babies inside stores where I'm trying to buy vegetable oil to bake things? So they think that because I'm watching his video, he's transferred a privilege of me baking flour and water goods. But wait a minute, before you murdered my mother in September of 2000, I thought she taught me to cook rice when I was 5 years old, all the way in Louisiana, before you ever knew I existed. So we've eliminated that. But then I thought, well, I wrote that I knew in an essay at DeVry University, I wrote in an essay that I adore the Microsoft Corporation because he's a childhood mentor of mine. Yeah, that's all I said at that time, right? And then I noticed that right now there's a Hispanic Miss C Fair 2018. And I noticed that there's a demolition team remodeling the inside